Tonight on the Black Channel, people are asking who killed affirmative action. But I'm asking, was it ever alive in the first place? The Black Channel is live. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. We are the Black Media, and this is the Black Channel, and I am the Black Authority. You are listening live to the only historically black college and university of higher education and learning in the cosmos. No affirmative action needed. You are, of course, welcome to join us. And join us you shall, because on tonight's program here, let me be very, very clear, folks. What you are seeing now, and I want you to understand it in its full historical context, that what you are seeing, what you are witnessing right now with the Supreme Court essentially, after all these decades, striking down affirmative action for college admissions, this has been the result of a decades-long jihad. You see, it took a century for us to get there. It was a trick bag when it was implemented. It was put into place with poison pills that were injected from the very beginning to basically destroy any benefit it could have had for us. And now even the symbolic benefits that it had are now the facade is being ripped away. When you had the insult, when you had the mockery of adding Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court, it was a mockery, an absolute mockery to do so. Trying to tell people that this was going to be Thurgood Marshall's successor, and of course, it was absolutely a mockery. Because everyone knew what was going on there, and now you have seen that here you are 3 decades later. And their token Negro that they put into place, that investment they put into place all those decades ago, now it's finally sprouted. Now it's finally come full circle. And now the investment that they put in decades ago is now paying off. You see, these folks think long term. They don't think short term. They make long-term investments that lull you into a false sense of security, that lull you into thinking that you're going to be okay, that lull you into thinking that you're winning, that lull you into thinking that some folks are on your side, lull you into accepting trick bag language. And you just recognize they left them there and left them there and left them there, and decades later, despite seeing what they said at the beginning there, these folks know they're Negroes. They don't choose any of them by accident. There's a reason why the political establishment, the media establishment, the academic establishment, there's a reason why there's only a certain type of Negro who can get in. There's a purpose and a reason for that, because it has to be part of the plan, because these are well-orchestrated machinations. These are well-orchestrated schemes, all for the purposes of making sure you're not able to get any further, and that one day they'll circle back around. And that's what you're witnessing here now, that they're going to circle back around, and that's where we're at. So how did you get here? When you're asking about who killed affirmative action, I want you all to understand who killed affirmative action. You're going to hear a lot of things. You're going to hear a lot of words. You're going to hear a lot of people here talking, and I find it all to be very, very interesting. I could play for you many, many things, but I'm only going to play for you one. ABC News ABC News, and this is a news piece that they did here. Right after it occurred, they talked to two students, and I want you to hear for yourselves how this went down. This should be a wake-up call for all of us. It should be a reminder for all of us where we are, that you're stuck between a devil and the deep black sea.
We wanted to get reaction on both sides of this debate from students right now. Bumio Masori, pro-affirmative action student at both Duke and at UNC Chapel Hill. And I'm curious what your reaction is. I know that you were hoping this would go the other way. What do you make of what you've learned in their decision so far, that they say can't simply be sort of a check mark based on identity, but must be part of a student's narrative, what they present to the school as part of their biography?
Well, I would say that I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised. When we talk about holistic
Nigerian name, just thought I would throw that in there. First of all, we're dealing with a Nigerian name. So we're not even talking to those of us that it was made for. And please remember, the whole court case was based on the 14th Amendment. So once again, the things that we built from the foundation, and take a look at who they get to represent us.
admissions, to say that you can include a student's identity, the student, the person behind the papers and the grades and the test scores, that you're not allowed to include race, which is such an encompassing part of at least my identity as an underrepresented minority. It makes me feel upset. We know what happens when affirmative action goes away from universities. We can look at California, we can look at Michigan, who has already banned it, and see how their state flagships lack a astounding number of Black and Latino students. The one thing that really...
Yeah. Let me back that up one more time.
The test scores, that you're not allowed to include race, which is such an encompassing part of at least my identity as an underrepresented minority.
Underrepresented minority. You see, there's a reason why the real leaders had to inform us decades ago, stop using those words, stop using those terms. Because you see, then it becomes a equal footing fight between deserving minorities and, quote, underrepresented minorities. And when you go into the paperwork, you realize that it was your underrepresented, so-called underrepresented minorities who were leading the fight against this. And the young woman here clearly is clueless about it, which is why we have been the only people who've been effective, because we know exactly who the enemy is and exactly what we're hitting at. And these other folks are trying to do everything else but. So she's and her position is an underrepresented minority. How's that minority coalition working out for you, Colaboo?
The test scores, that you're not allowed to include race, which is such an encompassing part of at least my identity as an underrepresented minority. It makes me feel upset. We know what happens when affirmative action goes away from universities. We can look at California, we can look at Michigan, who has already banned it, and see how their state flagships lack a astounding number of Black and Latino students. The one thing that really...
Yeah, one more time. First, she said underrepresented minorities. She caps it off with...
astounding number of Black and Latino students. California, we can look at Michigan, who has already banned it, and see how their state flagships lack a astounding number of Black and Latino students.
Yeah. See, you got to understand, these television networks, they know who they bringing in. They know who they're bringing on. They know who they're talking to. They bring you on for a reason. They know who they bringing out here. They didn't bring you on by accident. They know what you're here to do, and they know what you're here to say. So these are all of these no troublemaker folks. You ain't troublemaking. You're not hitting against white supremacy. You're not fighting against that. So yeah, she's got all their safe words.
Trauma I've gone through as an African-American woman in the United States. If I were applying
as an African-American woman, so there she goes with the separatist, feminist, misandrist talk.
To college today, I would have to write about those traumas in my Common App essay. I would have to write about those traumas and those very hard experiences for admissions officers to accept the overwhelming truth that we all know, which is that it is hard to be a Black person in America. And I don't think that's fair.
And Boomy, that's the point John Carl was making.
Okay, folks, here's the issue. When you're talking about it's hard to be a Black person in America without putting the conversation in its proper context of white supremacy. That your schools have always practiced white supremacy in the form of legacy and in the form of preferential treatment for white students. They've always practiced that. And there's never been a law or anything else that dealt with that in any way, shape, form, fashion, or manner. And it continues and persists to this day. So therefore, if you do not frame this conversation in the context of defeating and stopping white supremacy, then you ain't said nothing. That's the real problem. When you don't keep the eye on the ball of white supremacy and the laser focused on white supremacy, you've already lost the plot before you can even start, because you're not saying what it is you're trying to fight against. You're not saying why it is that this is necessary.
Moments ago, that students might now be forced to write about their experiences or about particular experiences that perhaps they might not have included in their essays because they're not allowed now moving forward to put on that piece of paper a key part of their identity. That's what you're saying here?
Yeah, I'm saying that, like, for example, when I was applying to college last year, I had put down that I'm African American. I had put down that I come from a Nigerian family. And being from the area that I was, everyone who is involved in college admissions knows that I was, by being Black, more likely to experience things such as under-resourced schools, which I went to growing up, more likely to have teachers that didn't look like me, which was the case in my school.
You see, she mentions, well, I'm from Nigeria, but that's not the basis upon which she wants to get protections. She wants to get protections based on what we've done. So if you want to know what the real hazard has been of throwing the doors open here of the immigrant class that they brought over here, they brought over an immigrant class that isn't trying to fight white supremacy. They're simply trying to improve their position under it. But they are not actually trying to fight it. They're saying, hey, Mr. Boss White Man, don't be so rough on me. But they're not actually trying to stop it. So that's why she mentioned, well, you know, being Black and Nigerian, she's still sitting up here. This empty-brained individual is still sitting up here trying to rep for being a female and rep for being Nigerian, and you just got your ass bounced because you're Black. So no wonder you're so ineffective at stopping white supremacy in your homeland, and now they're bringing you over here in alarming numbers so that you can be ineffective at stopping white supremacy here. You're already failed and defeated against white supremacy in your homeland. The only folks who are defeating white supremacy, they're bringing you over here to dilute our numbers so you can continue failing over here. As opposed to saying, you know what, I don't want to fail anymore. So there's a reason why they have given such preferential treatment to swelling the ranks and swelling their numbers with that. If you all agree with what I'm saying here tonight, give me the fire emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button for me. It's over 3,000 people in here live, but it seems like most of them here are not liking what they're hearing for some reason. So maybe there's some Clarence Thomas acolytes. I don't know. But if you agree with what you're hearing here tonight, hit the fire button and give me the fire emoji and hit the likes button, to let folks know that the majority of you agree with what we're saying here tonight. Because this young woman here, ABC News brought her on so she could basically say nothing except, well, ain't no white supremacy, or at least she can't figure out what the real damn problem is. You can't talk around the problem with something like this. You've got to name the problem with something like this.
Known by their race first and by their academics and otherwise other experiences, that now that students are forced to talk about racial discrimination and their experiences with it, their obstacles with it in their college essays, they're now being known by their race first and by their academics and otherwise other experiences second, because they have to put that in the forefront to prove their experiences through racism in the United States.
Bumio Missouri, we really appreciate your perspective. Bumi, stick with us here as we continue the coverage. I want to bring in Alex Shea, prospective Brown University student. I know, Alex, you're on the other side of this. You were hoping that the Supreme Court would move in the direction that it did today. Why do you think that this is the right way to move forward on this?
Right. Well, I think this is a win for students all across America, because we shouldn't be judging students based on their race when we're deciding who gets into what schools.
Well, I'm so glad to hear and to see that Stop Asian Hate is no longer an issue. You do understand, Alex, that, by the way, you just ratified that Stop Asian Hate is no longer an issue. So I'm so glad that we got here. Because you see, if you can go to the Supreme Court and fight against affirmative action, what you're saying is there is no Asian hate. Everything's cool. So I'm so glad that everybody stopped that facade and stopped that farce. And Alex here is here to stand up for that, by the way. But yeah, no more need for Stop Asian Hate. According to Alex, everything's fine. Everything is fine. By the way, shout out to everybody who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo. Thank you very much for your support. We appreciate that. I see all of you out there. Tonight's program is going to be a barn burner. We're going to touch on a lot here before the program's over tonight.
I think that I believe that your previous guest is mistaken in this regard, because I think that by getting rid of affirmative action, now we look at the individual student and what they've accomplished, and we can look at what barriers they've overcome. But we view them as an individual first and foremost, as opposed to just viewing them as a blob in an amorphous, larger racial group, as opposed to just under this new system, we get to view students for who they are as individuals. And I think that's a much better way to go forward on this topic.
You heard Bumi's point there, though, that this now forces students, if they want the school to take into account race in some fashion or form, that they're going to have to now write about this.
Right. Well, I think that fundamentally, right, for most people, race is just a characteristic. It's sort of the way that your body manifests. I think that for some students that does play a role in how they experience the world, but for some students it doesn't. And I think that allowing them that option to express that in an essay, for instance, affords much more freedom, because race doesn't affect everybody the same way. And to just have a blanket policy where everybody's race is considered no matter what, I don't think that's appropriate, because
race doesn't affect everyone the same way. You see, this is what we've been talking about. He's sitting here telling you race doesn't affect everyone the same way. Now, if that is not a white supremacist sympathizer, then what is? If that is not the definition of sympathizing with white supremacy, then what is? See, for those of us who've been dealing with this now for centuries, they bring over individuals who are newcomers, and their entire purpose is to get off the boat or the plane for the purposes of opposing the descendants of the slaves and what we've been dealing with. So their job is to get themselves classified as minorities like us, and then claim that they now speak for us. I want you to understand that. When you leave blackness behind, what you're now saying is that the Asian students get to speak for your blackness because you are all, quote, minorities. Dr. Claude Anderson has been preaching against that now for decades. Stop identifying yourselves as minorities, because when you do that, you're giving these other people the ability to identify as you, and thus now they speak for you, which is why he's saying, well, race affects different people in different ways. It affects black people one way. It affects black people one way. And if you want to know what it is, we've been telling you now for years and years in the new black media that when you see about the Nazis, and when you see about the fact that we said that they consider the Asians to be honorary Aryans. On YouTube, you got white men claiming they're globetrotting all over the place. And every time you turn around, they're talking about they want to get an Asian female. If they can't get a white female, they want an Asian. And if you wondered what the fascination was with that, is because, yeah, you can see they specifically harbor anti-black sentiments. These are not folks who've been on the soil now for a century. These are newcomers. These are first or second generations, and take a look at the inherent hostility that they're carrying against black people. So there's a reason why Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and so many others want to bring them over here in tremendous numbers. They know what they're bringing. They're not bringing them over here by accident. They know what they're bringing. And this is the result. The seeds that they planted decades ago. Remember, Joe Biden can sit here and tell you all today that he's a staunch, he's anti-segregation. Well, he wasn't before. Now he is. But take a look at what his policies have done. While he's sitting here telling you he's hugging Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is no friend of black people. Meanwhile, take a look at what he's bringing over. For the purpose of doing just this. While he's hugging you and telling you, oh, well, sorry, can't get nothing done here. But you brought these folks over here, knowing that this would be the ultimate result.
It impacts different people in different ways. I find that a lot of the towards much more freedom, because race doesn't affect everybody the same way. And to just have a blanket policy where everybody's race is considered no matter what, I don't think that's appropriate, because it impacts different people in different ways. I find that a lot of these arguments oftentimes in favor of affirmative action are somewhat incongruous, because I've heard a lot of people that say, like, hey, affirmative action, it's a good way to overcome past discrimination. But in my experience, as an Asian American, I'm not exactly sure how that works for me, because
it ain't about you. Because you have not been subject to past discrimination the way that the descendants of the slaves have. This isn't about you. So folks, understand, he's sitting here trying to speak for us. Well, they say it's about past discrimination. Yeah. Well, I don't see how that works for me as an Asian. Because it ain't about you. Well, I want to speak on your behalf. No, you can't. This isn't about you. One more thing for all the folks out there, and some folks thought I was wrong, or, oh, Jason, you overgeneralizing about the experience of Asians in America. This is an Asian in America telling you, well, I don't see any lingering issue. Past discrimination, I mean, what was happening to Asians in San Francisco and Los Angeles, meh, I don't see a problem. So if these children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the Asians who came over at the end of the 19th century, they are now telling you ain't no problem, ain't no discrimination, and whatever happened to our grandparents and great-grandparents, that's just water off a duck's back. That's what the great-grandchildren are telling the folks today. Whatever happened to our people 100 years ago, it ain't affecting us. Ain't did nothing to me. That's why you can't lump yourself in as a minority. Speak for yourself, Alex. You speak for you. You don't speak for us. If you want to dismiss it, that's your problem. You don't speak for us.
Like, hey, affirmative action, it's a good way to overcome past discrimination. But in my experience, as an Asian American, I'm not exactly sure how that works for me, because it's much more difficult for Asian Americans to gain admittance to schools than for white students, for instance. And I don't think that you'll see in the past any instance of Asians discriminating against whites. So for me,
I can show you plenty of instances of Asians discriminating against blacks. Would you like for us to go down that list? I can show you plenty of instances of Asians discriminating against blacks. You see how he's framing the discussion inappropriately and deliberately erroneously. This is about white supremacy and individuals who have been beneficiaries of white supremacy for the purposes of oppressing black people, particularly and specifically the descendants of the slaves. This has been specifically against us. So no, you can't speak on this because you haven't been subjected to any of it. The only complaint you got is about college admissions. You can go to another college. You can go sign up to go to another college. Systemic racism and oppression follows us in every aspect of society. College is just one of them. Which is why ABC News brought him on. By the way, if he was speaking against LGBT, the host would have been stopping him the whole damn time.
That sort of just falls flat. I'm going to Brown next year, and I'm happy that the admissions officers at Brown took me for whatever reason. But it does make me feel a little bit uncomfortable knowing that in that admissions office, when they were deciding whether they were going to accept me, reject me, that they might have been considering my race, because I think that that's not something that I can control or that anyone can control. And I think that it's unfair to judge someone based on that when there are really so many better ways to judge students based on their character, based on their accomplishments. Race, it's just how you're born, and you can't change it.
Alex Shea, we appreciate your perspective. I want to go back to Bumio, Missouri now. You've heard the other side. I know you've debated this on your campuses as well. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I think that Alex said something that was really interesting, which is that race for some people is just a characteristic. Race for people that look like me, race for Latino students, it's not just a characteristic.
This is why when the media brings on their immigrant class, they know that those are the things they're going to hear. They know they're going to say things like that. Rather than focusing on the fact that affirmative action was not created, in the words of Dr. Claude Anderson, for midgets, humpbacks, LGBT, or anything else. It was created specifically intended for the descendants of the slaves. Specifically for us. And from the beginning, they immediately began corrupting it and bastardizing it so you could turn it into something else. And because she doesn't draw her experience from the soil, and ABC brought in individuals who don't draw their experience from the soil, and they did that deliberately in order to further distort and corrupt the subject. Those of us who draw our experience from the soil, see, we would have centered the conversation around white supremacy. We would have centered the conversation specifically around white supremacy. And they've gone hard to work to make sure they distort the conversation and drive it and steer it away from white supremacy and turn this into a minority debate. Did you all notice the word white only came up with the Asian using it to his defense? The word white has not come up as the problem. That we're dealing with systemic racism. White supremacy targeting black people, specifically the descendants of the slaves, targeting us. And without you putting that in clear context, this becomes some ridiculous, amorphous free-for-all about minorities. It's ridiculous and it's disgusting. It does no good for anyone. But that's the reason that they did this. This is why we have been learning to get past the code speaking code talk. They can't get any more of us to fall for the code speaking code talk. So they're bringing on their immigrant class to sit up here and go back to the code speaking code talk and then claim they're speaking for us. Because we wouldn't have done that. We would not have fallen for that, and we would not have done that. That's the reason why they got to do this. In other news, this is what's going on over there at MSNBC. They're talking about HBCUs brace for influx of applicants after Supreme Court ruling.
I hope that students have, especially Black.
What the? Okay, well, is this our representation? All right. I ain't gonna say nothing. Shout out from the Octoroon room. Thank you very much.
Black students, especially intersectionally marginalized communities, will have a seat at the table.
Wasn't gonna make it. Oh, wasn't gonna make it. Oh, these tethers. Oh my goodness, these tethers and triracials. Wasn't gonna make it. Oh, I was trying. I wasn't gonna make it. Boy, I'm telling you. Oh, y'all. Man, look here. They're gonna have to bring in some Moet and some Hennessy. Pepto and Gaviscon ain't gonna get it for me now. Oh, I need the Moet and the Hennessy. Damn this antacid. I need something to lay me back. Oh yeah, antacid ain't gonna get me. Boy, look here, I ain't a drinker, but boy, I'm about to get lit up if this happens tonight. Oh, antacid ain't gonna hold me. Antacid ain't gonna hold me. Between the immigrants and the triracials, y'all, they over here tag team. Both these chicks over here tag teaming me. They over here tag teaming me. I didn't even make it out the gate. As soon as I pressed play, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm like P. Diddy, press play. As soon as I did, whoa, okay, we already off in the woods now.
I hope that students have, especially Black students, especially intersex.
Katie Fang? No, okay. Whoever in the world Katie Fang is, I guess that's the host. Elise Martin Smith. And I'm like, okay, she here to speak for everybody except Black folks. I'm like, baby, you can, whoever you came to speak for, we good.
I hope that students have, especially Black students, especially intersectionally marginalized communities, will have a seat at the table in redesign.
What? Will someone tell me what in the all beef patty deep fat fried hell she talking about? Black students and intersectionally marginalized students. This is what NBC brings on to sit up here and completely distort and cloud the issue.
Especially intersectionally marginalized communities will have a seat at the table in redesigning admissions, and that could include taking away legacy and donor admissions and other things that give unfair advantages to communities of privilege.
Families will lose.
Communities of privilege. What in the hell? That we would have a seat at the table. Folks, this is not the language of power.
Taking away legacy and donor admission. The table in redesign communities will have a seat at the table.
A seat at the table. Folks, we don't need a seat at the table. We need outcomes, not a seat at the table. We don't need a seat at the table. We need specific outcomes. Not a seat at the table because you give us a seat at the table. Now we just get a front row seat for our oppression. A seat at the table. What the hell?
Us, that we can exist in spaces that were meant to keep us out.
Communities of privilege.
Families will lose the support, pride, and hope that can come from sending students to college. And communities will lose role models, people that can show us that we can exist in spaces that were meant to keep us out.
Those were students reacting to the Supreme Court's landmark decision that effectively puts an end to affirmative action in public and private colleges. And the ruling is already having a domino effect. Historically Black colleges and universities are bracing for an influx of applicants as the changing landscape of college admissions takes shape. Joining me now is Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick, the 17th president of Howard University. He's also a professor of surgery.
Let me brace for this. I got a feeling I know where this is going to go. Let me brace for this.
Now is Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick, the 17th president of Howard University. He's also a professor of surgery at Howard University's College of Medicine. Dr. Frederick, it's an honor to have you on the show. I, straight out of the gate, want to get your initial reaction to the Supreme Court's affirmative action ruling.
Yeah, very disappointing. I think it's going to devastate the opportunities for minority populations.
Man, look here. I'm trying to maintain my religion. Y'all, I'm trying to maintain my religion tonight. I'm like, what would happen on the Black Channel if Jason Black just sat over here and got blowed? I don't know how I'm going to make it through this program now. Damn the Pepto. I'm like, do I know anybody know a weed man can get me something within an hour? Is there a weed man in Shreveport delivering? Can we get an Uber? Man, look here. I'm just wondering, can my program survive me over here getting blowed out? Cause I'm be like, oh, I don't know this, and I can't make it with that. That's not mind altering enough. I'm gonna need some. Oh, this nigga talking. It don't bother me that much though. I'm about there. You can't ask me to actively listen to what's going on here and to actively listen to the folks that this damn white media keeps bringing on here. They keep bringing these folks out here and they say, well, Jason, can you just make it through the program? No, nigga. Oh, no. Y'all about to have me legalizing weed, and weed might not be enough, just truth be told. I might have to kick it up a notch after that. Are y'all gonna see me walking around New Hampshire with a hoodie and some jogging pants on? Is that where I'm about to end up? Because at the rate we going here, it looks like that's where it's going. I might be ending up there in Maryland walking the streets with some jogging pants with holes in the knees and a hoodie on. Look, how y'all expect me to make it through this? As soon as he started talking, I'm like, oh, we're in trouble.
Action ruling.
Yeah, very disappointing. I think it's going to devastate the opportunities for minority populations. And more importantly, it's going to hurt the pipeline for well underrepresented fields such as medicine, law, dentistry, where especially in medicine and dentistry, we have a crisis in America. In 1978, we had less black men. We had more black men in medical schools in 1978 than we did in 2015. So we already have a crisis on our hands, and I think this is going to further that crisis.
You know, HBCUs may be anticipating an increase in applicants, Doctor, but they also remain chronically underfunded as educational institutions. Did Howard University already prepare for the possibility of this outcome?
You know, it's interesting because over the past year, we've been making plans to try to expand our presence in the health sciences fields. We only take 126 medical students every year. This year, we'll take 130. But we received over 8,500 applications. So we have a desire to try to double our medical school. But the resources that are needed are on the order of about a $7.5 billion endowment to do that. Our current endowment for the entire university, not just for the medical school, is just under $1 billion. That compares to, Harvard at over $52 billion, I believe. And then when you look at from a pipeline point of view, we send more African Americans to medical school than anyone else. And we also send more African Americans from our undergrad programs to STEM PhDs. We sent more in the past 2 decades than Stanford, MIT, Harvard, and Yale. The combined endowment of those schools is $160 billion. So getting more applications is not necessarily going to be desirable if we don't have the funding to take more students.
And let's take a look, Dr. Frederick, at states like California, for example. It's one of maybe about 9 states where affirmative action is banned. Back in 1998, California voted to ban affirmative action. When that happened, diversity plummeted. The associate...
Think about that for a moment. So in California, affirmative action didn't make it through, but gay marriage did. Oh, well, don't worry. We'll get the courts to take care of gay marriage. So y'all think about that for a few moments. And yes, there was another Supreme Court case that they ruled on here that this white man who works for the post office wanted to take off on Sundays. He didn't want to have to deliver Amazon packages. And the Supreme Court ruled that, yeah, the post office needs to accommodate his religion so that he doesn't have to work on Sundays. So let me get this straight. You don't have to accommodate black people for past and current systemic racism. That doesn't need to be accommodated. But a white man saying that he doesn't want to work on Sundays, now that Christian white man needs to be upheld and protected. Now, if that had been a black man talking about, I don't want to work on those Sundays, lazy nigga, that's what that would have been. So just understand what this Supreme Court is doing here right now. Just recognize what they are normalizing. This is code to the whole rest of the society to let them know that. So in California, I just thought I'd go ahead and throw that out there for you.
Vice Chancellor of DEI at UCLA said it's taken 25 years of experimentation through race-neutral policies to make up that deficiency in numbers.
So to do right by the descendants of the slaves in California, it takes 25 years of experimentation. But for the LGBT, no, you ain't gonna stop there. We'll just take this to court and that's the end of that. You think about that for a few moments. Just like with the Asians. Ooh, stop Asian hate. It goes straight to legislation. No waiting, no delay, no kidding.
So as a university president, how are colleges and universities going to rework their admissions policies to be in compliance with this ruling, but still be able to achieve the kind of diverse campus communities we need?
Yeah, it's actually going to be very difficult because if you cannot use race, to have a student use an essay to explain, as Justice Roberts pointed out in his opinion, explain how race has impacted them, I actually think that in and of itself is discriminatory because you're asking those students to defend the existence of racism that they have experienced when they should be talking about the excellence that they have achieved and the aspirations that they have in coming to college. So you're actually, I think, putting an undue burden on those students. I think it's going to be very difficult. And I think every time that we come up with a methodology to do it, it will be challenged with a lawsuit. And I think that that's unfortunate.
And that's going to mean years of litigation, expenses that are unnecessary for universities and colleges that could be used for other things in the budget. Kind of staying on this point, Dr. Frederick, do you think universities are actually going to maybe abandon standardized testing scores, which are also historically being overvalued, but not actually accounting for the underservice of certain type of minorities and communities? And maybe these universities and colleges are now going to focus more on personal essays, which you speak of, which are going to be time consuming and maybe wasting very valuable real estate in these essays to be able to explain things that they shouldn't have to explain in terms of their backgrounds.
Yeah, I think that's one. I think that's one area that we're going to have a challenge. The other areas, I think, and you see it with state institutions that are chronically underfunded. So major flagship state institutions that are chronically underfunded who take in out-of-state students to help bring in more revenue because those students are charged more, etc. They tend to use zip code as a surrogate for wealth and to try to attract and to increase the number of students that they are taking in by taking in students from certain zip codes. And that can happen, which would further marginalize students from underserved minority populations if you start using things like zip code. And I think all of those surrogates, people will use school districts, zip codes. All of those are going to begin to impact what we see in terms of the population, which will further, I think, marginalize the number of underrepresented minorities in those classes. And the other issue...
Underrepresented minorities. People, what in the world? Underrepresented minorities. Really? Is this real? This is going to be the person. Who is he protecting? Really? Then you wonder how Howard got where they are. You wonder about that. How did Howard get here? Who's defending our interests? So far, can't tell. So far, can't tell. So far, can't see. All right, fine. Just leave it there. Just leave it there, man. Yeah, you wonder how you got here. You wonder how you got here. You know what? I'm going to tell you how you got here. You wonder how this happened? You wonder how this occurred? I'll tell you how it happened. I'll show you how it occurred. We're going to get there. I'm going to show you. But before I do, we're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to show you and explain to you exactly who the chief villains are here in this story and exactly who is responsible. Before we do, I want to thank everyone and everybody who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo. My man Tommy Felix supporting B1 Media. The racist war is never over till we win. Thank you very much for your support. We appreciate that. Doris, Oberon, everybody else here, thank you very much for your support. We're going to take a very brief non-commercial break. When we come back, you all know me. I do the documents. I do the documentation. I'm going to take you to the Supreme Court ruling so you can see exactly what they said. So you can see exactly what they said to justify this. We'll be back here in a moment. This is The Black Channel.
Are you ready to take the next step in your career or business? With Higher Life Recruiting and Consulting, you can get the help you need to reach your goals. Our experiences span multiple industries, giving us the ability to source top talent across various fields. We specialize in STEM and high-tech industries, but we are equally adept at recruiting and professional services. Our services include career consulting, resume writing, LinkedIn consulting, interviewing, lead generation, sourcing, and talent mapping. Follow us on Instagram at Get Higher With Us.
Having computer problems? Is your PC or Mac running slow? Need help building a gaming PC? Having problems with your Apple or Android device? Call or text Fix Too Fast. We can fix common and uncommon computer software issues remotely, anywhere, nationwide, from the comfort of your home or business. Are you having hardware issues with your PC or Mac? Ship it to us and we will ship it back fixed. Call 1-877-412-9890 or text 513-440-1646 to speak to a technician. Please visit our website at www.fixtoofast.net.
A white supremacist assassin seeks revenge. Corrupt FBI agents with evil intentions. Dangerous black collaborators dedicated to treason. Occam Jeffers must defeat them all and somehow survive. One misstep and he's a dead man. Join Occam Jeffers as he looks the devil in his blue eyes and tells him, Black first. A sequel to the underground hit War of the Heart, Spirit of 1811 Publishing presents God Love Us, on sale at Amazon. Pre-order and save today. Visit spirit of1811publishing.com and show your love.
More Threads, a brand owned by a descendant of Black American freedmen, was created to uniquely address Black American history and contributions that have been intentionally hidden and suppressed. Use their apparel and more to learn and share the Black American history of Black inventions, heroes, towns, Black business districts, and more. Sign up and support not only a Black-owned business, but a movement at www.morethread.co.
Order yours today to experience all the benefits of Ash Kickin' natural body butter. With skin so smooth and soft, you'll thank us for it. Shop Ash Kickin' online. That's ASHKICKIN.com.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slaveries and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
This is The Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all here this evening. as we are discussing who killed affirmative action. Well, you know what? I've been talking about it for a while. I've been talking about it for a long while here, and everything that I predicted has come to pass exactly the way as I predicted it to come to pass. And that's exactly what you end up with here. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at this right quick? Who killed affirmative action? Let's go straight to the trigger men. Let's go straight to the trigger men. First of all, here's Students for Fair Admissions, and they've been sitting up here using Asians as their front people and crash dummies to protect and project this. So this is what they did here. But here's the guy behind Students for Fair Admissions. We covered him before, Edward Blum. He's been the guy spearheading this. He's been the guy leading it. He's been the guy pushing it. He's been the guy behind it. This is what he's been doing. This is the one. So just recognize what we've been up against and what we've been dealing with. This is what we've been up against and what we've been dealing with here. So understand the levels of deceit and the levels of sophistication and machination that you're talking about here. That's the thing I want you to recognize. Understand the levels that we're up against. These folk putting in real damn work. Talk about organized and financed. They're for real about this. They're serious about this. You see, black folk are never going up against just one person or one individual. You're going up against an organized society. You're going up against an organized society. This is what we got to deal with. Think about that for a few moments. So you remember I covered this before. I wanted to show you all this before, that they're using Asians as their front people. They're using Asians as their willful collaborators. But when you take a look at who's behind it and who's pulling the strings, oh, it's the white supremacists. Now, some folks say, well, he's Jewish, but it's the white supremacists. It's the white supremacists. So recognize what we got to deal with. Coming at you from all sides. Recognize what you're up against coming at you from all corners. Now, that's just what I'm showing you there. That's just what I'm showing you there. I want to take you somewhere else, and we can take a look at the Supreme Court ruling itself. This is the actual verbiage of the Supreme Court ruling itself. And you can see who the plaintiffs are: Students for Fair Admissions versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. Now, you talking about Harvard, which should have some of the best minds there. A former president was head of their law review. So you take a look at this and you would figure, well, Harvard is eminently qualified to defend themselves against this. And they start talking about what the Supreme Court starts talking about, what they don't like about it. Now you take a look at what they're saying here. And it goes on for a while. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But what I am going to say here is that it says the court rejects UNC. They're talking about UNC, is that University, Northern California? They're talking about UNC. Harvard, University of North Carolina. Harvard and the University of North Carolina are two of the oldest institutions of higher education and learning in the United States. All right. It says here that UNC has a similar admissions process. Every application is reviewed first by an admissions office reader who assigns a numerical rating of each of several categories. Readers are required to consider the applicant's race as a factor in their review. Get a little closer on that. so you all can see that a little bit better. In making those decisions, the committee may consider the applicant's race. Petitioners, Students for Fair Admissions, is a nonprofit organization whose stated purpose is, quote, to defend human and civil rights secured by law, including the right of individuals to equal protection under the law. SFFA filed separate lawsuits against Harvard and UNC, arguing that their race-based admissions program violate, respectively, Title 9 of the Civil Rights Act of, I've got messed up on this. Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. After separate bench trials, both admissions programs were found permissible under the Equal Protection Clause of the court precedents. In the Harvard case, the First Circuit affirmed and the court granted certiorari. In the UNC case, the court granted certiorari before judgment. Now, I want you to listen to this next part here because this is a little bit important. I want you to listen to this next part. The court rejects UNC's argument that SFFA lacks standing because it is not a genuine membership organization. An organizational plaintiff can satisfy Article 3 jurisdiction in two ways, one of which is to assert standing solely as the representative of its members, Warth versus Selden, an approach known as representational or organizational standing. So in other words, this is talking about, can they even bring a case? Can they even bring a case? And the court's like, they start bending all the damn rules here. So they start bending the rules about who can bring a case. They argue instead that SFFA cannot invoke organizational standing at all because SFFA is not a genuine membership organization at the time it filed suit. Respondents maintain that under Hunt, a group qualifies as a genuine membership organization only if it is controlled and funded by its members. In Hunt, the court determined that a state agency with no traditional members could still qualify as a genuine membership organization in substance because the agency represented the interests of individuals and otherwise satisfied Hunt's three-part test for organizational standing. So, of course, we've been in rules. As the courts below found, SFFA is indisputably a voluntary membership organization with identifiable members who support its mission and whom SFFA represents in good faith. SFFA is thus entitled to rely on the organizational standing doctrine as articulated in Hunt. Now, you listen to this next part here. Proposed by Congress and ratified by the states in the wake of the Civil War, the 14th Amendment provides that no state shall, quote, deny to any person the equal protections of the law. So we're talking about immediately for the slaves and those of us who are the descendants. That's what this is referring to. And this is white supremacy. In their minds, this is a joke. In their minds, this is a cruel joke against us. We'll support hate crimes against black people. We will not defend black people with hate crimes. We will prosecute black people with hate crimes. And the 14th Amendment will not protect black people. It'll protect everybody else and penalize black people. So understand, when you're dealing with the sadistic white supremacist structure, to them, this is a joke. It goes on to say here that proponents of the Equal Protection Clause described its foundational principle as not permitting any distinctions of law based on race or color. Well, that was supposed to be to protect black people. White people are not suffering, have not then and do not now suffer any type of discrimination or distinction of law. That's the whole point, is, well, white folk ain't suffering. We were the only ones suffering. You can't say this law is protecting everyone. White people don't need protection. That's the whole point. They're not being penalized. They're not being discriminated against. They're not being systemically oppressed. White people don't need protection. And the courts understand this, but understand white supremacy is a sick joke. Any law which operates upon one man, and by the way, to speed this up, I'm kind of running through the quotation marks, but you can see it on your screen. Any law which operates upon one man, they maintain, should operate openly upon all. Accordingly, as this court's early decisions interpreting the Equal Protection Clause maintained, the 14th Amendment guaranteed, quote, that the law in the states shall be the same for the black as for the white, that all persons, whether colored or white, shall stand equal before the laws of the states. Meanwhile, they've ignored this for us, by the way. Now, they bring this up in front of the Supreme Court. Oh, you can't do that. But by the way, they've ignored this for us the entire time. Our constitutional rights are ignored and violated every single day. And they ignore this for us on a routine basis. Accordingly, as this court's early decisions interpreting the Equal Protection Clause explained, the 14th Amendment guaranteed that the states shall be the same for the black as for the white, that all persons, whether colored or white, shall stand equal before the laws of the states. Despite the early recognition of the broad sweep of the Equal Protection Clause of this court, alongside the country, quickly failed to live up to the clause's core commitments. Quickly failed for whom? They quickly failed who? Not Alex. Didn't fail him. Not Mr. Blum. Didn't fail him. Who did it fail? It's only failed one group. Has failed no one else. Despite the early recognition of the broad sweep of the Equal Protection Clause of the court, alongside the country quickly failed to live up to the clause's core commitments. For almost a century after the Civil War, state-mandated segregation was in many parts of the nation a regrettable norm. Regrettable. You didn't do anything to stop it. This court played its own role in that ignoble history. You think? Alongside Plessy v. Ferguson, the separate but equal regime that would come to deface much of America. After Plessy, American courts labored with the doctrine of separate but equal over half a century. Brown versus Board of Education. Then they go through some other case law there. It goes on to say here that in the years that followed, Brown's fundamental principle that racial discrimination in public education is unconstitutional reached other areas of life. For example, state and local laws requiring segregation in busing, racial segregation in the enjoyment of public beaches and bathhouses, you can keep your bathhouses, and anti-miscegenation laws. These decisions and others like them reflect the core purpose of the Equal Protection Clause, doing away with all governmentally imposed discrimination based on race. Palmer versus Sadati. Eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating. Now, this is their words in the Supreme Court ruling. This is John Roberts. This is John Roberts, the Supreme Court Chief Justice. This is him talking. This is him. Eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it. That's interesting. Y'all ain't dealt with the parts that we talked about yet. You want to eliminate everything except the parts that we keep coming back to you for because you told us that you can't prove racial intent. That's what you told us. That you can't prove racial intent. So the only time that they want to talk about race is when it goes against us, the only people who are not protected. We need to eliminate all racial discrimination except when black folks show up, then we'll kick it down the can. We'll kick the can down the road. Eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it till the police show up. Qualified immunity. When the police show up, is qualified immunity. Every time you show up. Accordingly, the court has held that the Equal Protection Clause applies without regard to any differences of race or of color or of nationality. It is universal in its application. Yickwo versus Hopkins. For the guarantee of equal protection cannot mean one thing when applied to one individual and something else when applied to a person of another color. And yet that's all we've encountered. Any exceptions to the equal protection clause's guarantee must survive a daunting two-step examination known as strict scrutiny. See, when we show up, all of a sudden, well, there's hurdles you got to get over and there's standards we got to get around here. When we show up, all of a sudden when we show up, then it needs to be that. They're talking about when they first considered a university may make race-based admissions based in Bakke. That was another case. For years following Bakke, lower courts struggled to determine whether Justice Powell's decision was binding precedent. Yeah. See, when we show up, it said that Justice Powell explained, and antipathy toward them was deeply rooted in our nation's constitutional. Let me go back a little bit there. This court first considered whether a university may make race-based admissions decisions in Bakke in a deeply splintered decision that produced 6 different opinions. Justice Powell's opinion for himself alone would eventually come to serve as the touchstone for constitutional analysis of race-conscious admission policies. After rejecting 3 of the university's 4 justifications as not sufficiently compelling, Justice Powell turned to its last interest asserted to be compelling, obtaining the educational benefits that flow from a racially diverse student body. Justice Powell found that interest to be a constitutionally permissible goal for an institution of higher education, which was entitled as a matter of academic freedom to make its own judgments as to the selection of its student body. But a university's freedom was not unlimited. Racial and ethnic distinctions of any sort are inherently suspect. Justice Powell explained, and antipathy toward them was deeply rooted in our nation's constitutional and demographic history. Accordingly, a university could not employ a 2-track quota system with a specific number of seats reserved for individuals from a preferred ethnic group. That's interesting because the legacy folk get that. They get a specific number of reserved seats. Neither still could a university use race to foreclose an individual from all consideration. Race could only operate as a plus in a particular applicant's file, and even then it had to be weighed in a manner flexible enough to consider all pertinent elements of diversity in light of the particular qualifications of each applicant. For years following Bakke, lower courts struggled to determine whether Justice Powell's decision was binding precedent. Grutter 539. So in other words, we go through all this stuff here where for black folk, it's like, ooh, we got to struggle and strive with it. We got to struggle and strive with it. That's what they're telling us. So what they say now is 20 years have passed since Grutter, with no end to race-based college admissions in sight. But the court has permitted race-based college admissions only within the confines of narrow restrictions. Such admissions programs must comply with strict scrutiny, may never use race as a stereotype or negative, and must at some point end. Excuse me? When white supremacy ends, sure. Respondents' admission systems fail each of these criteria and must therefore be invalidated under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So in other words, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that were intended to protect specifically the descendants of the slaves, they're now telling you that that amendment penalizes us and benefits everyone else. That's what the Supreme Court just said. The 14th Amendment now has been weaponized against the very people who were put in chains that it was intended to protect. They're now telling you it protects everyone except you. Well, yeah, we know it was written for you, but white supremacy, cruel joke. It now protects everyone except you. It doesn't protect you. It protects everybody else. That's what we're doing now. It protects everyone else. So they're letting you know this isn't accidental. This is the plan, man. This is the plan. This is what it always was. This is the plan. So just understand, these people here, what we've been talking about this whole time about who they're bringing over here and what they're over here doing and what their agenda is and how they've been doing it and how they've been working hand in hand. Just understand that's what you're dealing with here. This is the biggest Supreme Court decision since Brown versus Board of Education. And take a look at what happened. But I'm just letting y'all know something right now, that this is good. This is good. I want you all to understand this is good, because this is what you need to see. You need to see that these folks are serious as hell. They ain't taking no prisoners. They're serious as hell and they getting after it. They're serious as hell and they're getting after it. They ain't playing no games. I've told people for a decade now, you see, if white supremacy takes its boot off of black folks' necks, black folk are going to go back to sleep. So it is going to take a constant, never-ending barrage and siege on us. Because if you leave us alone for a moment, we're going to put our thing down and go walking back home. So no, we can't be allowed to do that. Yank the Voting Rights Act, affirmative action. Black folk have got to remain vigilant. Unfortunately, what black folk have shown in America is that if we don't remain under attack, then we won't remain vigilant. If we don't remain under attack, we won't remain vigilant. So right now, you don't have a choice in the matter. You got to remain vigilant. You got to remain on point. You got to remain ready and looking. You don't have no 2 or 3 ways around it. Ain't gonna work that way. Not gonna work that way. Just remember what you're up against here and how it really works. Recognize what you're really up against and how it really works going forward here, because you have a whole bunch of folks sitting up here trying to deceive you and fool you. Tell you everything's all right. Tell you everything's okay. And I've just been one person sitting here warning you, if we don't take a look at these things and stomp out all the demons, they're not going to just stop in one place. That's not the way that works. It doesn't work that way at all. I want you to see how serious the threat really is. Next up, just remember, next up, now they get to your physical rights. Now they get to invalidating your physical rights, your civil rights. See, they started with the Voting Rights Act. They done moved over to affirmative action. Next up is the big ones, the Civil Rights Acts. Mark my words, those are the next ones. Next, we gonna get to those pesky little Civil Rights Acts. Shout out to Kwame Kirkland there in the super chat. Thank you very much for your support. We see that in number 1. Next up is your civil rights, y'all. Those are going to be next. Only for us, though, not for everybody else. Everybody else will be okay. They're going to say that everybody else needs civil rights protection against us. That's what they're going to say next. We need to have civil rights protections against black people. That black people, their civil rights are violating everybody else's. That's what they're going to tell you next. However, you might disagree. Therefore, the telephone lines are now open. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the program that has defined and redefined what it means to be new black media. We're very glad to have you all here with us today. Thank you to everyone who has contributed to support on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo. Everybody gathers around when momentous events like this occur. We're here every damn day dealing with it, which is why we have to monitor this. We're here every day. Shout out to B1 Media as a lifesaver. My man Mark B. Andrew L., you staying triggered. Stay vigilant. My man Mr. Chadwick. And Mr. McReynolds, thank you very much for your support on tonight's program here. And to everybody else here on the program, Najee, Mr. Wilburn, and everyone else, thank you very much for your support. We're going to go ahead and jump on the phone lines here. Let me get caller from area code 323. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, Big Brother Jason. This is Brother Elijah calling out of Brooklyn, New York.
All right, Brother Elijah, what's on your mind?
Brother, I got a quick question. I got two quick questions. With this affirmative action history that I do, obviously, Big Brother, and my first question to you is, did Black people, Black Americans, ever benefit from it in the first place? And my second question, Big Brother, now that this has been terminated, where do we go from here?
Well, as a whole, no. We never actually benefited in the first place as a whole. No, we didn't. Because it got short-circuited early. They started injecting white women into it when they included trick bag language, and what generally was happening was Black folk were saying, well, how serious could it be? How bad could that be? How bad could it get? And then you're finding out how bad it is and how bad it could be and how bad it gets. So that's been the real issue. So it started, and what they did give us were some things. So you started getting government jobs. You started getting some college jobs. But as far as a full-blown remedy for systemic racism and white supremacy, that's never occurred. The poison pill was put in from the beginning. Now what they're doing is trying to make a move so that it never gets to that point. It never really benefited us like it was supposed to begin with. It essentially didn't. Now they want to make sure that it's a foregone conclusion that it can never do it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Big Brother.
Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from area code 571. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Shakir. I'm calling from Arlington, Virginia.
All right, Shakir from Arlington. What's on your mind?
Yeah, today I called into C-SPAN. They were talking about affirmative action and reparations. And I mentioned your name, and I mentioned Professor Black Truth, and I mentioned Tariq Nasheed. And I said you have a substantial Black audience, and that they and C-SPAN should invite one of you on to talk to them. This is 16 minutes into the broadcast today of July 1st. And you should listen to what they said about you.
I can imagine.
Just listen to it.
Like I say, definitely, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Absolutely. Like I say, look, we're persona non grata. We're the people who tear things up. We're the people who rip things down. Just understand, they know who the real threat is. And they are our enemies, and I am proud to say that they are our enemies. Call from area code 425. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, this is Agnes, and I'm calling from Seattle, Washington. Good evening.
All right, Agnes from Seattle, Washington. What's on your mind?
Hi. Two things real quick. First of all, the Asians really screwed themselves out of gaining admissions to these white schools, okay? What's going to happen in the next couple of years, you will see Asian admissions decline precipitously. Plus, they don't have any other schools to go to. At least, second point, we have HBCUs. We built those schools. Those are our schools. We can go back to them, and we can rebuild from there. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller. Okay, I hit the wrong button on somebody. Let me get caller from area code 647. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, Jason. This is Grace from Brampton.
Hello, Grace from Brampton. What's on your mind?
So I just want to say that Black people need to wake up. There is no POC solidarity. There's no POC unity. Black people are the only group of people that has to advocate for other people's issues. But if we ask other groups of people to advocate for our issues, then it's always up for debate, or they try to gaslight us. And these coons actually think that these POCs are on our side, but these POCs, they come from communities that practice anti-Blackness. So Black people, forget about what's happening in the Ukraine, Asian hate, and what's happening with women in Iran. Focus on issues in your own community. Focus on your own problems, because these POCs, they will never pass a chance to throw Black people under the bus in order to get that honorary Aryan status or to get that model minority status. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. And like I say, you take a look who was the stalwarts fighting for affirmative action and who was fighting against it, who was at the forefront against it and has been now for a long time. So just understand that, folks. A lot of folks out here, the minority coalition, I'm asking anybody and everybody, will someone please tell me, where's the minority coalition today? Where is that? Call from area code 818. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, this is Javar from Long Beach, California.
All right, Javar from Long Beach, what's on your mind?
This is actually a really hard subject for me because my girl is actually half Asian. I simply mentioned to her that, asked her how many historical Asian colleges that they have. And obviously she wasn't able to answer. And so I haven't spoken to her like ever since this thing was passed. And yeah, I just had to say that, man. It's crazy that this one decision could have such a profound effect on me, like that so directly. Yeah.
Like I say, man, y'all are going to find out the hard way in this regard. You're going to find out the hard way who your friends are and who they're not. Brother Neely Fuller has talked about this forever, and this is something for y'all to learn, that y'all hop into bed with folks and, do what you do, but just keep in mind that you are...
Well, she's half Asian.
Okay, brother, okay, which half runs her? Y'all see how he jumped in there? Well, she half Asian. Brother, which half is running it?
No.
Which half is running
no,
it?
she sides with
okay,
her,
brother, what I'm saying is that y'all are hopping in the... Brother, there's a whole bunch of folks sitting up here hopping in bed and, quote, biracials. And y'all are so busy trying to do what you think is a racial sexual conquest, and then you get out of bed and realize that she's not confused. Y'all are kind of confused. Right. You think hopping into bed with her shows solidarity and affinity with you, and then next thing you know, you bring up something like this, and all of a sudden she shows you which side runs things. So sexual,
well,
she thinks that any Black genealogy gives her a pass for sexual contact with you. But when it comes to protecting her interests, she's showing you whose interests she's protecting. And I'm telling you, right. What happens when y'all hop out the bed, that's the real person. Yeah. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. It's going to be a shock. It's a soul shocker. It is a soul shocker to some people. I understand it. It's a soul shocker. But y'all got to recognize what the hell going on. You hopping into bed. Some of y'all out there, you hoping for some interracial sexual access. And I'm like, do you see what the folks you hoping for interracial sexual access from? Do you see how they moving? And a bunch of y'all, some of your friends who are racially mixed and biracial, just understand where they come from. Just understand where they come from and understand you finding out when you put racism in their faces, when you put fighting white supremacy in their faces, all of a sudden you see it's like, whoa, I just assumed that they understood this is common sense. It's like, oh, no, they're on their side. She's like, she's okay with you being able to move around. She just don't want you to move around too much. She's okay with you being empowered so long as you're not empowered too much. Call from area code 757. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Tanya from Virginia Beach.
Tanya from Virginia Beach. What's on your mind?
Black for no reason, Justice Ketanji Brown. She actually recused herself from this vote. And even though her vote wouldn't have swayed it, she didn't want it on her record. So her non-admission is still a guilt. And so people, this kinfolk, skinfolk, this is another example.
Well, I mean, she spoke out about it and stuff. I mean, basically, she had a good reason for recusing herself. The real thing is she ain't did this. It's not like this is some change up for her. She's not doing anything for Black folk, and her presence on the other cases is the real issue. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 424. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, what's up, brother Jason? How you doing? This is Rashad from Houston by way of LA.
All right, Rashad from Houston, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up this issue, and I'm not shocked about this. Black folks should have known a long time ago about the trick bag, about affirmative action, because I remember back in the 90s when they eliminated it over in California. And one of the things that always got me is the fact that every discussion I've seen about affirmative action, they never bring up the fact that white women have been the main beneficiaries of affirmative action, not black people, not Asians, but white women. And it's one of the things that Dr. Claude Anderson talked about, and he's been speaking about for years. And one of the facts that no one brings up, and they always put in these immigrants, particularly that never bring up that fact. Every
especially
debate
when it comes to money and things like that, money and contracts. They're very, very big to bring up, they're executing it for white women, but you're absolutely right. They don't bring up the fact that, by the way, the program has been mishandled, or at least the statutes have been mishandled and misappropriated the whole damn times. The folk is supposed to help. It doesn't happen anything for us. But that's the point. The reason why it doesn't get discussion is because that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be symbolic to keep us placated, but in execution, it's business as usual. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 562. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Okay, area code 562 has either been abducted or they're sitting up here trying to find the local trank dealer. So, all right, out they go. Let me get caller from area code 404. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Bobby from Atlanta, Georgia.
All right, Bobby from Atlanta. What's on your mind?
Thank you for taking my call, Jason. And I believe I have a unique take on this because this is a textbook example of what happens when you play the long game. Because if you'll remember, the Federalist Society set their whole game up for the elimination of affirmative action, for the elimination of abortion, and for really all of the political leanings to go their way. The only thing they really needed was the right people in place in all three branches of government. And they were finally able to do all that when Donald Trump got into office. The first domino came when Clarence Thomas came into the mix. Then Donald Trump came into the mix, and Donald Trump came in and appointed the other three judges on the Supreme Court. Now the Federalist Society has the right people to carry out their agenda. Now, granted, they were already vetted before they got the position, but you know what I'm talking about. Now we are seeing the long game being played out by the GOP. And
okay, well, we'd be remiss to make this a GOP issue, because you got to understand, Asians have not been suffering systemic racism. It doesn't matter who's on the Supreme Court, Asians are being protected. LGBT, particularly white, are being protected. Immigrants, for the most part, are being protected. So it would be remiss on us to make this a GOP and Democrat issue. That would be very myopic, short-sighted, and ill-informed. You're dealing with a white supremacy issue in both parties. Neither one of them is giving us, because there's not just one branch of government. The Supreme Court is not, the only branch of government. There's three major branches of government, four if you count the media, but there's three major branches of government. You see all of them working in concert, whether it's Democrat or Republican. Things keep backsliding for us. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller area code 973. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Whether it's Democrat or Republican, things keep backsliding for us.
Okay, they're not paying attention here, so out they go. Let me get caller from area code 562. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
How you doing? This is Elton from Long Beach.
Elton from Long Beach. What's on your mind?
And outstanding broadcast. I've sent it to a number of people. Particularly, I'm here in Long Beach. I'm from back east, but a lot of cats out west don't quite get the minority definition. Why I never leaned into that word. But I'm gonna go back to the philosopher Jason Black. Once white supremacy is finished with the tools, it breaks them. So now that it's been using these Asians, what exactly is it going to do with them? Because I'm an Ivy League graduate, and I can tell you right now, about half of them boys I went to school with were legacy admits. You know, they could barely tie their shoes and smoke a joint at the same time.
Well,
So,
here's the thing.
You know, this
as far as what you're talking about there is that they break the tools and they're done with them. Here's the issue. You don't even have to break a tool here. They're already broken. Because what they've chosen here, they've chosen these particular Asians because they desire to be in second place. You don't have to be. These Asians are not going to these schools to compete to lead. They're going to prosper. They're going to excel. But they are not going with the expectation of overturning the status quo. That isn't their goal, and that's not what they're trying to do. So that's why Ed Blum chose them, because ultimately they're not trying to overthrow the system of white supremacy. As I said before, they're just trying to improve their position under it, but they're not trying to stop it. See, if they were, he would have gotten rid of them. He wouldn't have fooled with them. He would have go try to find some Arabs or something. He chose the class that he did for a reason. He chose it for a purpose. He didn't choose Nigerians, you notice that, who skunked most folk on the scores. Didn't choose those. Went to go choose the Asians and a particular set of them. So just recognize they're not competing for first place. So it's not necessary to break them because they've already been broken. Now all you got to do is just put them to use. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get called from area code 867. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, caller from area code 867 is taking a smoke break apparently. Let me get caller from area code 973. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, Jason. My name is Kasim Mazon. It's a pleasure being up here. Earlier, you said something about the Supreme Court only recognizing the 14th Amendment when it comes to other races of people. I just wanted to say you are so correct on that. I actually have 4 cases in U.S. District Court while I'm representing myself pro se, and all of my cases was dismissed on the basis of the 14th Amendment. Or more so of the fact, when in one of the opinions of the judge's decision, he said specifically, even though I had video evidence of all of these, he said specifically, it's up to my discretion to review this case under the basis of the 14th Amendment. And because the state is also allowed to do so, I am not going to do so. I am going to allow the state to do so. So he actually remanded my case back down to state court when it was already in federal court. But I went ahead and made the appeal to the Third Circuit Court of the United States. So I just wanted to say that you are so right when it comes to them not adhering to the 14th Amendment.
Oh no, it becomes I'm white and I say so. When we show up, there is no Constitution. The Constitution only magically appears when they can use it to penalize and victimize us. Otherwise, no, there is no Constitution. No, there's not. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get called from area code 667. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Santee from Severn, Maryland.
All right, Santee, what's on your mind?
I wanted to ask you, when you say like this is good for the circumstances of what's taking place with affirmative action, do you mean that more on the measure for like the stakes of reparations for freedmen?
I mean, from the perspective of keeping black folk vigilant, because the truth of the matter is, if our rights are not under a constant siege, unfortunately, I'm sad to say the last 5 decades have shown that black folk have a very high propensity for wanting to just walk off the field early, declare victory, and go home. So if these folks don't keep the boots on the necks, Negroes are just going to start getting weak and wobbly and go home and say, well, don't worry, leave it up to Biden. It's unfortunate, but that's what it is. We have demonstrated over the decades that if we're not under constant siege, if these folks don't keep the pressure on, if they don't come back with some new and improved bull jive, then we tend to just forget what they did, and then we're so eager to want to go back home. So unfortunately, they're going to have to keep being so blatant and so over the top and so egregious that it simply cannot be ignored. Therefore, we simply cannot leave the battlefield.
Real talk.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes all the sense in the world, OG.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 501. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
I'm from Arkansas. My name is Karsha. Carsha.
All right, Karsha. And where from Arkansas are you calling us from?
Arkansas, Little Rock.
All right, Karsha from Little Rock. What's on your mind?
So I just feel like this, and I just hate being honest. But the truth is black people, they not gonna do nothing. I mean, they listen to other people. They don't want to vote. They don't want to at least hear what the Republican or Democrat Party is saying. I mean, how do you expect for black people to change or do anything with civil rights laws and amendments if you're not even voting or in no sense, in no political nothing? Don't know no one.
Show me the benefits of black folk voting. Go.
It's none.
Okay.
It's none.
So
it's not really none. I mean,
I'm not really understanding what your point is.
I live in a Republican state.
Okay, I don't really see your point.
Let me finish. Only like maybe 30-something% voted. We had a black man that was running governor. Only 30-something%.
Okay, and if he had gotten the office, what was going to change if he got in the office?
I mean, it'll change as the first black man in government.
Okay, so in other words, symbolism. Was he running on a black agenda?
Yes.
What was the black agenda?
What
was the black agenda he was running on?
His own black agenda. I mean, what are you talking about? Helping, trying to build up communities, more LSCs, buying more land so we can build up homes in the hood, in the poverty, things that you speak about and don't like, okay? Because I've been in politics for a very, very long time, and that's why I live in the hood. And I feel like this, when it comes to black people, they rather listen to other people.
You have entered a dimension of silliness and sassiness. A dimension of the dull and the dense. A dimension of the country and the callous. They don't read. They don't write. They don't think critically. They don't speak articulately. But they have access to a phone. Lots of phones. You have entered the battle zone. Caller from Go 205. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, sounds like somebody here is in desperate need of a wellness check. So we certainly want to make sure that they get all the assistance that they need. Sounds like they're having a conniption there. So we'll definitely make sure that they are able to get all the assistance that they need for a wellness check. It's very, very important to have that. Some folks might be missing that, and that could be an option. So Definitely, they need some assistance over there. So if anybody knows that person who sounds like they're having a hernia, if anybody knows that person who sounds like they are being afflicted with a hernia as we speak, I wouldn't want them to not have the ability to get help. I wouldn't want them to not have the ability to get help. So, if anybody knows who that person is from the 205 area code, definitely go ahead and see if you can help them out. I don't have their number. But if anybody does know their number or whatever, try to get in touch with them and help them out. Call from area code 501. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, caller from area code 501 has been abducted. Caller from area code 248. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, my name is Cicely from Minneapolis.
Hi, Cicely from Minneapolis. What's on your mind?
Well, I was just wondering, you know how you say that white supremacists love to have both sides of the argument? I wonder if this is like one of those situations where it's like an attack against multiple people at one time. Like they just did abortions. Now they're doing, then they did student loans. Now they're doing, then they did affirmative action. Well, affirmative action before student loans. And then you look at how we haven't benefited from affirmative action at all. So I feel like it was really just an insult, you know, because we haven't benefited from it anyway. Like, I haven't seen it. Like, I really would like to have black doctors, but you don't see it. You see black colleges. You see the student ratio. You see the 2 black faces in the entire 200 plus class of black doctors. Of doctors. You'll see 2 black doctors. You look at medical books. There's no references to how certain illnesses affect melanated people. I think we should focus on being autodidacts, and they should cut the check, and we should start holding our HBCUs, our historical black colleges, to higher standards, and start demanding that they have African American or FBA representation in the schools. I think that all of this talk that we have of this, we are all this a people of color, and how this is affecting all of us. This all of us talk really has to stop. I mean,
well, fortunately, you've come to the right place to stop that. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Let me go ahead and help your plane land. Let me get caller from area code 301. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello, this is Charles calling from D.C.
All right, Charles from D.C., what's on your mind?
Well, I'm going to say it's not surprising where this country basically ruled. The Supreme Court did this in a affirmative action because, again, this country started saying in this, whole Constitution, didn't it say black people, African Americans, the slaves they brought here, said they're only, 3/5 of a human being? It's not really surprising if you look at the history. But this country does not care for black people. It just only uses us. It only uses black people for only their own free labor and their own, just disposable. They use us as disposable. That is what it is. That is what America does to black folk. And people are saying, oh, my goodness. I'm like, no, look at your history. The history of this country is basically, it's basically evil upon evil upon evil. And they're saying that, black folk have been fighting ever since they got here. Ever since we got here, we have been fighting and clawing and scratching. And it's one of the most damnedest things. These same people who have been abusing us, who have been using every little, taking advantage of, will come around and say, if you help us out, we'll help you out. I'm like, no. How many times have we been looking at it and saying, well, We'll help. What about the whole, Black and Brown Alliance? All these other alliances, we continuously try to find these false alliances. And then what? What have we done? What if we have gotten all these fake alliances?
Well, basically, all you've been able to get from that is exactly where we ended up here today. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from, I'm not sure where the area code is. Let me see. If somebody is calling from overseas, what I want for you to do is you need to post in the chat room that you're calling from outside the U.S. so we'll know who you are. So let us know if that's somebody calling from outside the U.S. Caller from area code 909, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, this is Keith from Los Angeles.
Okay, Keith from Los Angeles. What's on your mind?
Hey, what I really want to say, man, in order for, we got to wake up. Like, they doing this stuff against us, and it's because they know who we are. If you read Psalms 83, you know that all these nations are against us. So, like you said, next up is going to be the voting rights, going to be, what was the other one you said? It's going to be, I done lost my train of thought, but it's going to be...
okay, well... Thank you very much for giving us a call. I think. Caller from area code 804, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello?
Just turn off your speakers. What is your name?
Hello?
Where are you calling from?
I'm sorry, Virginia, and my name is Cassie.
Okay, Cassie, have you turned off your speakers?
Yeah, let me do that, because...
Auntie, chill!
Hold on. I did. Okay, I just want to say one or two things. I'm 65 years old, okay? And I want the kids to know this. Before they ever let us into those white colleges, we were being educated. We found a way to be educated. We are not helpless people. We're resourceful people. We are survivors. Okay? If you read back in history, you will see that when the black people came out of slavery, the first thing they wanted to do is learn to read. That's how powerful and strong we were. Don't let none of this stuff discourage you. Okay? I've had many racial obstacles in my life, and either I went over them, around them, but I got through them. And so can you. All it's saying is they don't want you in them white schools. That doesn't say that you cannot be educated.
I agree with that 1,000%.
That's all I wanted to say, and thank you for that.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Shout out to my man YGLT in the super chat. You don't have to be a meteorologist to know what rain looks like, and you don't have to be a plumber to know other material is either. They showed how they feel about us, and now let's get on code and pull our support out of their community and reinvest in ourselves. Thank you very much for your support tonight, brother. We appreciate that. Let me get caller from area code 401. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, this is William from Norfolk.
William from Norfolk. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to say that, I heard a lady previously talking about nobody votes. But, like you said, first of all, if the the Republicans, for white supremacists, were taking as many losses as we are recently, they would have declared war by now. They would be shutting the government down. They would be they would be stopping everything. And you have to think, if the Democratic Party isn't stopping everything, if they're not trying to invade Washington, D.C., by now, then they're not working for you.
Well, they're a part of
voting for them. If they're not going to fight for you like the Republicans fight for white supremacy, then why are you how could you possibly vote for the Democratic Party?
What they're
How could
showing
not
you is
shout
that
them
they're a
down every
part
time
of
they
it.
show up?
That's what they're showing you, that they are a part of it. It's not Republicans on one side and Democrats on the other. It's Democrats and Republicans on one side and black folk on the other. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from area code 415. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
It's Don P. Combs from San Francisco.
Don P. from San Francisco. What's on your mind, brother?
Man, do I know this problem. The mere fact that I'm calling from San Francisco, it is, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Everywhere I look, everyone is getting rights who just got here yesterday. And, you know, I looked up our man, Dr. Fredericks. And yeah, just as I suspected. Yeah, he came here at 16 years old to go to school. And see, what folks have to realize is the enemy is very selective with their tools. So we can expect this man who brought this lawsuit, he'll soon be broken. They'll use Dr. Fredericks for a while longer, and they'll break him. The thing about it is this. Folks keep wondering, what's happening? What's going on? Why is this happening to black people? You got to back up and look at the field, because it's not about what's happening to black people. Because in my lexicon, black, I can't get anything historic out of that. There's no land called black. So it's a question of who are we in fact? And that's what the brother was talking about who got the Twilight Zone music when he started talking about Psalms 83.
Well,
See, it
here's
doesn't
the thing.
matter if you have melanated skin.
I wish we
You
could go
still
into
be
the
my
courthouse and quote Psalms to him. I wish we could do that. Here's the real thing.
Yeah, but the reality is this.
Well, here's the thing, though, Don.
You have to
Going
understand
forward,
who you are,
well,
historically.
Understand. We certainly understand who we are as the descendants of American slaves. That's the only, because we're the only people
It
being
goes
targeted.
beyond that.
They're not just targeting folks, you know, they're not targeting their immigrant class per se. They're bringing them over here to destabilize a specific group of people. So if they can get away with that, well, at least that's what the pressure they're putting on there. That's what the whole point of it is. And right now we're just experiencing the effect of that, because their plan has come together here. And it's not something that they just started working on yesterday. They didn't just start working on it 5 years ago. This has been a relentless, steady drumbeat. So all these Supreme Court rulings that got black folk out the streets, they had a spate of Supreme Court rulings that got black folk out of the streets. Now you're having a wave of Supreme Court rulings that basically putting black folk back in the streets. But in my opinion, that's actually a good thing. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Let me get caller from area code 843. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, this is Phil from Beaufort, South Carolina.
Phil from Beaufort. What's on your mind?
You are great as usual. You had an interesting program in two ways. Those first two schools that you had up there, the Nigerian immigrant who was at Duke and the Chinese guy, I guess he was Chinese, who was at Brown. 30 years ago, I got into both of those schools. I'm black, FBA, and I got in there. I mean, maybe they saw that I was black, but my SAT scores were the median for Brown, meaning half of people that they had admitted were above me, half were below, and they were above the median for Duke, meaning most of the people were below mine. So I didn't have to get in on affirmative action. I didn't go to either one of those schools. And then my best friend from high school, he got into Howard, which was the other school that you had on there. So you know, everything you're saying, and to say this, unlike Clarence Thomas, I have not benefited one bit from affirmative action. My whole life.
Slow down, Phil. Slow down. Are we still voting for Trump?
Say what?
Are we still voting for Trump?
Oh, I love Trump. I mean, I do. If he runs, I'm voting for him. Yeah.
Okay. Phil, I have told your ignorant jughead ass not to call my program anymore. Now, I've already told you that before. The next time you do, you're going to get a wellness check. Do you understand, nigga?
Well, I mean, I blocked all those calls.
Now get your loaf of light bread ass head off my damn phone. Let me go ahead and mark Phil here and whatnot. So just in case he shows up here again, the next time you show up, you are going to get a wellness check. Because it sounds like you pretty damn sick. You're definitely pretty damn stupid. Hungry hippo looking bastard. Caller from area code 804. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Ben, Richmond, Virginia.
All right, Ben in Richmond, what's on your mind?
Yeah, first things first. What about the set-asides of non-blacks into HBCUs? Are those gone too? Second, what about let's get a movement together to dismantle immigrant grants and sort of set asides for those who come in from other countries. These free businesses and free loans and free grants that they're getting is an unfair advantage in an alleged capitalist society.
Right, you're absolutely right about that. But remember the rationale that is used for those. What they will tell you is that, well, it's not being granted on a racial basis. It's being granted on either foreign aid, for nationalistic reasons. So for people from a specific geographic region, but not because of their race. So you see what their trick bag rationale is, which is why we came with, okay, fine. For us, it's not based on our race. It is based on our lineage as descendants of American slaves. So our race is incidental. But that's not the argument that we're making. So I understand what you're saying. For the most part, the trick bag language they're going to go around that is different. However, it can be done, but you're going to have the political will to do it and not get weak-kneed and cold feet when it's time to go ahead and see it through. That's the real difference you'd be dealing with. Because it's not about just recognizing it. When it comes to reparations, when talking about reparations in California, what do we have to do? They tried to bring everybody into it. You had to push back and show them, no. This is exclusive, not inclusive. So, yes, you can get it done, but you're going to have the will to do it. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 213. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Turn off your speakers. 5 seconds. Okay. Well, somebody else here is apparently having all kinds of mental and emotional problems here tonight, so wouldn't want them to get too far lonely on their own either. So, like I said, you got to understand when the crack is flowing and the white supremacists are angry and the bootlicks are out here doing what they do. I certainly hope that somebody knows their phone number, because I don't know their number. I don't know it. But it sounds like they are in need of some companionship or at least some help for here tonight. So I hope somebody finds their number. And by the way, not just finds the number, finds their carrier too. So I hope they find their number. Let's go ahead and see if they can get some assistance. Call them area code 929. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, Jason. My name is Daryl from Chicago.
All right, Daryl from Chicago. What's on your mind?
Jason, excellent broadcast. This just puts a big spin on everything that you've been talking about so much. And at this time, it's really a situation where, even though you said it's good, which it is, just letting us know exactly just to stay on point, stay on code, and do what we need to do. And you're right about the civil rights laws that were in place. They're going to attack those next. Those things they're going to come at that hard. I see that coming. So I just want to land my plane there. Thank you very much for the broadcast again.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Well, definitely, like I say, that's one of those things here where, folks here, keep your eyes and your ears open. I don't want you to be scared of anything. I don't want you to be scared of anything. I don't want you to be worried about anything here, but I do want you to be vigilant. It's very, very important that you do that. Now, that's the part that you need to do. You do need to remain vigilant. Don't sit around here wringing your fingers. Don't sit around here being scared and fretting and whatnot, but just recognize that this is a reminder once again of the terrain and the landscape on which we find ourselves, and that we have to remain vigilant going forward. We are under siege. Don't let anybody tell you that your ability to buy a cell phone and some tennis shoes means you're free and you're okay. No, you're not. No, you're not. So just recognize what you're up against. Recognize what you're up against. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought. We do this every weekend. Click that red subscribe button. Click that yellow notification bell. Join us each and every time that we're here. If you haven't been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, you want to go and check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD and streaming. Go to blackchannelfilms.com. That is blackchannelfilms.com. I want to thank all of you for joining us here tonight. I want to thank everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program. I definitely want to thank you all for that as well. Everyone who's contributed on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo. Thank you very much for that support. We appreciate that. And we're going to keep trucking and deal with it, folks. I want you to understand, we are the special forces. We are the elite. We are the vigilant. We will continue doing what we've been doing. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.